Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape episode. I'm Jonathan London, your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, we'll strap yourselves in for some real big pop culture talk. We're specifically talking this episode about the recently finished Obi-Wan Kenobi series. That's the first season. I don't know if there's going to be another season, but it just wrapped up on Disney Plus. And Ian's here to talk all 6 episodes of it with me. What did y'all think? Feel free. The chat is open. If you're watching this live, it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and if you're dropping those resumes, it's on LinkedIn. This is Geekscape. We love talking pop culture. You're going to get a normal Geekscape episode later in the week with some news and reviews and maybe an interview. But this one is dedicated just to Obi-Wan Kenobi. So if you haven't seen all 6 episodes, they're going to get spoiled pretty heavily. You know how Ian does it. He's a passionate geek. That's why we love him. And he's also the encyclopedia of all things pop culture. So he's going to be dropping a lot of knowledge. You're not going to want to miss this episode. I do want to pause real quick and tell you all about our sponsors for the month, NordVPN. Geekscape is brought to you by the good folks at NordVPN. Go to www.geekscape. That's not right. That's not right, Jonathan. They can go to Geekscape if they want. We're going to put up an article about Stranger Things this week that it's going to refresh you for these upcoming 4.5 episodes. But this episode of Geekscape is brought to you by our good friends at NordVPN. Go to www.nordvpn.com/Geekscape. They're going to give you a 1 month free on your subscription. They've got some incredible protection for your computer. And you probably need a VPN with everything that's happening governmentally right now in the US. Seems like the empire's taken over. So you're probably going to want a VPN for your computer to keep freely browsing and going to those sites. Okay, so NordVPN is going to hook you up. Use Geekscape at the checkout, nordvpn.com/Geekscape. That's all I got. Let's start the show. All right, Geekscapists, let's not delay on this one. We have a ton to talk about with this Star Wars series on Disney Plus, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I have mixed feelings. I think Ian Kerner has mixed feelings, but I'll tell you what, after thinking it was an unnecessary series and being like, hey, why'd they make this? Is it really enjoyable? You know what? Let's not complain about cotton candy here on Geekscape. They gave it to us. It's to enjoy. And I'll tell you, in the end, I really actually did enjoy it. But I'm going to go ahead and bring my friend Ian Kerner in here. Again, this is the Obi-Wan Kenobi season special. So we are going to spoil a ton of stuff. Ian, how are you, man?
Hello there.
Why, hello there. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So Ian, let me lead you through some of these talking points as we get through it. I have them open here in front of me. I like to make an outline for Ian and I. Some of the episodes we just get super
we don't
hyped.
go all over the place.
Yeah, and I gotta apologize, Geekscape, for some of the Ian episodes because we're both super excited about this stuff. Sometimes they get a little rambly. We're gonna try and keep this one organized. We're going to talk about the series overall, and especially the Star Wars universe going into the Obi-Wan series, where all the characters were at the end of probably the Clone Wars or Rebel series. Is that right, Ian? Those are the cartoon series. And then we're going to go episode by episode, and then we're going to wrap up with everything. But yeah, buddy, I think that's a good place to start. Like going into the series.
First of all, that Clone Wars and Rebels, I mean, I know it's a lot more involved than just watching movies, but there are definitely a lot of people that consider themselves big fans that haven't watched those shows, and they are absolutely part of continuity. So
yeah, and now that you have a lot of those creators coming over and working on these Disney Plus series, because it's almost entirely a lot of those writers. A lot of that
Dave Filoni ran, both of those shows, and, he runs The Mandalorian. He's running Ahsoka. Ahsoka's going to be very tied in to the stuff in Rebels. So
yes.
For people that
it's worth watching.
Yeah. And
I watched Clone Wars and enjoyed it. I think Rebels is probably better.
I think they're both great. I've been rewatching Clone Wars, and we'll rewatch Rebels with my stepson. And so we're almost done with Clone Wars. And honestly, back in the day, I remember finding Clone Wars, I thought it started slow and got really good, but rewatching it, it starts off pretty good. You know, but it definitely gets even better as it goes. You know,
so going into episode 1, can you just tell me where all the pieces are? Because if you didn't watch Rebels, I want to know kind of where they are.
So the show's 10 years after episode 3.
Okay.
Right. So in terms of what other stuff we've gotten that is canon, well, Bad Batch is right after episode 3. It flows right out of season 7 of Clone Wars, which they did later. Season 7 of Clone Wars actually didn't come out till after Rebels because it had been canceled, and they went back and did it. And it actually sets up Bad Batch. It also gives us a 4-part episode that is literally showing us where Ahsoka is during episode 3.
Okay, and why she's not in that film, but now she's
fits in everything. As for why, well, everything that happens in season 5 of Clone Wars affects her status. I don't want to ruin it for anyone that intends to watch it, but I guess this show we're doing spoilers. She leaves the Jedi Order.
Ahsoka does.
But she's still, you know, enough of and working with the clones and all that. So, but in Rebels, again, I'm telling people to watch it. They haven't watched it. I don't, you know, but I mean, look, here's the thing. Here's spoilers, right? What I'm about to say, I think, is actually a major motivating factor at this point for people to go ahead and watch Rebels. There's a whole big mystery early in Rebels about someone called Fulcrum, who's behind pretty much forming the Alliance. Ahsoka is Fulcrum.
Okay.
And so Ahsoka becomes a giant part of Rebels. You don't know it in the first season. I think till the first season. So she's a giant. She's in Rebels a lot.
So you would think that
including a Vader fight.
So you would think like she and Bail Organa are probably like at this point, 10 years later, in some stages of creating a rebellion.
No, so 10 years in, you have a lot, you know, what you see in so we were going through the list of things. So with Rogue One, we see 2 different periods, right? We see, you know, when Jyn Erso is a young girl. That, I believe, is around 5 years. So probably about 5 years before this, maybe something like that. Maybe a little bit before that, even maybe only a couple of years into the Empire. But what we know, so Saw Gerrera we see young Saw Gerrera fighting against the Separatists in Clone Wars.
Okay, and that explains how he got kind of the organic or the robotic stuff on his body.
No, you don't see that there. But it's just that as a character, so, you know, he existed. So when they used him in Rogue One, it's a nice callback. But,
that is cool.
You know, but what we know and what we see a lot of in Rogue One is there's a lot of infighting because the Rebels, they're not an organized thing. There's different factions and all that. So it took time and effort, and Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, bringing all that together. Listen, it's been speculated by some people that if Alderaan hadn't been destroyed because of the different factions, you know, everything came together under Mon Mothma. But, you know, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma had different views on things, and the Rebels might not have had it together enough to actually win.
So Bail Organa almost had to be sacrificed.
I mean, no one knew that or thought that at the time, but it's an argument that's been made that maybe that actually ended up in some way helping them. It also, it hugely drove up, like anyone that was from Alderaan that wasn't on Alderaan joined the Rebel Alliance, right?
Sure.
Like, what's her face? Cara Dune, you know?
Who I don't think we've seen in the series, have we? We haven't seen her in Disney Plus. Cara Dune? Explain it to me.
No, I'm talking about it from Mandalorian.
Oh, yes, Cara Dune. Oh, yeah, that's why we haven't seen her.
But the point is, she was from Alderaan, and she joined up because Alderaan got destroyed.
Yeah, and then sadly, you know, the career got destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we see her again, you know, but I mean, whatever. It's, you know, she's a fighter. It's fine. Yeah. But the point is that it speaks to, you know, events that happened, things that the Empire did that, you know, maybe not, you know, Grand Moff Tarkin destroying Alderaan, which is ostensibly a peace-loving planet, galvanized a lot of, you know, people, you know, behind the scenes against the Empire.
So let's start focusing on the series that we have.
Obi-Wan. So
we've got the Inquisitors. I kind of want to know about them. Like, how much are they around?
We see the Inquisitors are actually a bunch in Rebels, and I've always struggled with this idea of the rule of two of the Sith, but there are only two. Because I'm always like, all right, I get the idea is that the Sith, will keep fighting each other. So they instituted this rule of two, and I believe it was Darth Bane, ages ago that did that. Because otherwise, so there's a master and apprentice, but of course the apprentice is always eventually going to look to overthrow the master, Right. But where it always gets weird is there's always seeming apprentices. You had Asajj Ventress, you call them Dark Jedi. You have the Inquisitors. They're being taught. They're basically Sith, but they're technically not Sith. I mean, to me, I think it's sort of it's a bullshit thing. It's like they're jerking around about it.
But they're all Force sensitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, literally, why are they not Sith? Because they're just not. It's like it's a question about how much they're training them, how much what they're teaching them. Are they actual straight up apprentices or not? But they are Sith. They're Dark Jedi. They're using the dark side of the Force, and they're being loyal to the Empire, and they're being used. I mean, as to whether or not they're Sith, it's what becomes of them. Are they just fodder? Vader at different times, and you have comics as well as cartoon stuff. He's generally sort of very dismissive of them, but they're working for him. So and the big thing that as we watched Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I don't know if you want to break it down by episode.
Yeah, I've got it here in front of me.
But I'm saying we did see the Grand Inquisitor in Rebels. So not to jump ahead, but when he seemingly died, we're like, well, that doesn't make sense.
No, it seemed pretty.
Of course, everything ended up making sense.
It seemed pretty unceremonious for his exit to happen. But the other two that are with him, the third sister and the fifth brother, are they in Rebels? Do we see them in Rebels or any other maybe books?
I can't speak for all the books. I've read some of the books. I haven't read all of them. But the thing is, most of the books, well, it keeps getting tricky with what's canon and what isn't, right? But anything that's come out since episode 1 is canon.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Everything post 1999.
No, well, definitely
because you had the Dark Horse book still. You still had a lot of that stuff.
Excuse me. Yeah. Definitely, since Disney bought Lucas is Rogue One the first?
Rogue One came out after episode.
No, Rogue One. So episode 7 is the first, right?
Yeah, episode 7. That's what I meant. Yeah, after episode, I think everything episode 7.
So I guess anything since that
post Disney is canon, and they have the advantage of being able to pick and choose what they're bringing over, like Admiral Thrawn and stuff like that. I think that Mara Jade is
to call out. So Thrawn was introduced in a book series that goes back to the 90s.
That was my reintroduction to Star Wars. That was all we had.
Back then, Lucasfilm said, "Hey, this book series, this is canon. This is going to be the continuation." We get Admiral Thrawn, who was an Empire admiral, and there's this great trilogy, and later there's another duology of this amazing, strategic genius, that's trying to, keep the Empire going with this fleet, right? And then suddenly it's, that doesn't count. But then you have Dave Filoni, so Thrawn is a big part of Rebels.
Okay.
So that made it canon again. So Thrawn counts.
But we haven't seen
necessarily the book series that's later, but the character exists and counts.
But characters that were introduced in that era, like Mara Jade and stuff like that fans love,
they don't count until we see them.
Yeah, and I think they have the advantage of being able to bring them up when they need them. Okay,
so they decide to use them, suddenly counts. That's what happened with Thrawn. And Thrawn, there's been a comic series, that counts because it's it's put out by Marvel, it's Disney, it's continuity. And he's been in Rebels, and he's mentioned in the Mandalorian episode with Ahsoka because the way Rebels ends, it's set up that Ahsoka's searching for Thrawn, and also who Thrawn has with him.
So one thing I wanted to ask, and this can lead us to the Moses Ingram conversation, is that when I first saw Reva, what I wanted to say was that the thing that made Thrawn really special when we were like reading those early Timothy Zahn books was that the Imperials were strictly like racist. Like they were human only, they were male only for the most part, and that Thrawn succeeding in their hierarchy actually said a lot about him. But it seems like with Disney, there is
that still exists.
Yeah, it does.
The Thrawn miniseries is a comic miniseries. It's basically his origin. It's in there.
Yeah, but now we have Reva, who a lot of fans were like, wait a minute, what the hell? But they also did that with any female of color or female that's been joining Star Wars.
It's a frustrating thing. And I don't know if I don't think it's just Star Wars. I mean, I think that the thing about Star Wars is it's just so generationally such a big deal that you have all kinds of people, that are fans. And so it's really disappointing. You have the kinds of people that, we don't really want to know that happen to be Star Wars fans.
I got to tell you, I get on the Geekscape page on Facebook sometimes, and there will be posts that I put up, these memes that some of them you send me, and I'll share them. Like the one about Batman Capitalist in Robin that was recent. That thing got like 7 million impressions, and I'll end up with some people up there saying some kind of MAGA stuff about everything, and that starts the big debates, which I think also helps it get to 7 million impressions. But I got to tell you, Geekscape, get on there. Yeah, you can't throw something out into the fandom, and if something gets massively popular, pick which fans pick it up. Sadly, because there are some bad apples here.
Yeah, political conversations are difficult, and as a general rule, I'll say it's okay for people to have different political opinions. It does get kind of tricky when the politics seem to be limiting other people's, way of life and existence. And, anything that's starting to get to racism and things like that. I mean, the joke on the Star Wars point is the Empire is the bad guys. They're the fascists, right? So the idea that Star Wars fans would actually have, perspectives that line up with the Empire is comical.
Yeah, it's like people still. I saw a meme this past week after the Supreme Court reversal, and it was Thanos snapping his fingers, and I was like, "Is that really the person that you want to fucking agree with? Is Thanos?" Y'all don't know what you're talking about.
Unbelievable, but So Moses Ingram, who played Reva, actually, my family knows her. She, her roommate was my stepson's nanny for a while, and she actually would sometimes like sub in and stuff. And there was like a 3-week period that she was at my house every day. So we know her well, and she's great. I don't know if you saw the Queen's Gambit. She's brilliant in that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a Yale grad probably is pretty good at the acting thing.
Yeah. And no, she's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And so that what's frustrating is if there's anything wrong with anything she's done in Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's the script.
Yes. And can we talk about that? Like, how did you feel with that first episode? Because it was a mixed bag, I think, for me.
Yeah. I think you said something early on here. So let's address it, which is, and this came out in a conversation with a friend of ours, and I said it. A friend of ours was sort of going off on the whole thing, and I said, "Look, let's just call it what it is. There was nothing about the show that was necessary. Okay, mm-hmm. We didn't need it, and frankly, so episode 3 ends, and and this actually comes off in season 6 of Clone Wars. You actually see Yoda commune with Qui-Gon and Living Force and learn a lot. So then the whole notion that at the end of episode 3, he's saying, and that's sort of leading into episode 3. So he's now telling Obi-Wan, yeah, you have work to do. Because the idea is the whole Force Ghost thing, that was not a thing before Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon's whole thing was he was learning about the Living Force. And so then he came back from the Living Force and taught Yoda. And Yoda's
he's the first person to do it.
Yeah. And Yoda's saying to Obi-Wan that he needs to learn to do it. So at the end of episode 3, he doesn't know how to do it. He's not going to do it. The whole line in episode 4, you strike me down, I'll become, more powerful than you can possibly imagine. That's what it's all about. Vader's like, what the fuck just happened here?
And you see Luke use it in episode 8.
Yeah.
I mean, to project himself against the First Order.
It's an argument whether or not that's using the Living
because
Force
he's still alive or not. Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's just that, I mean, look, Luke is so very powerful, and so he has some force abilities. I don't know if I would say it's exactly the same thing.
Sure.
But you could, I see the point if you're arguing, is he doing something similar because he's appearing through the force? So, yeah, maybe. But, episode 3 leaves us with, what seems to be a couple of things that are clear, which is that Obi-Wan's going to commune with Qui-Gon, and he's going to learn to become one with the living force. The other thing that is relevant to bring up Rebels is, many people in watching the prequels felt the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan, is so nothing. You're not really using the Force, and you have all these big Force battles, right, later. And I always like the idea that they're so powerful that they're not even bothering at that shit.
Or they just negate each other, yeah.
And, so when you see the first fight, and again, I know we're getting ahead,
sure.
but, when this thing starts and Obi-Wan's cut off from the Force, I'm really bothered because not only is it under my map, but Maul shows up. He's a big part of Clone Wars, which is set up in when you see Maul at the end of Solo, that's because he's already come back in Clone Wars.
Sure.
You see how he's come back and he has metal legs and all this stuff. But he actually continues on into Rebels, and he's older and he's still looking for revenge on Obi-Wan Kenobi. And they finally meet and they duel in Rebels. It's not a fight. It lasts seconds.
Obi-Wan just whips his ass.
I mean, I always think of, to reference the comic book stuff, the whole Demadius Justice League run where Guy Gardner was always talking shit at Batman, and one
and Batman just
decks him and it's one punch.
Right.
It's like that. It's over so fast. It's just not even a thing. It's just like
and the fans were probably hyped for it, and it was like,
no, it's really like that's it. But the point is, because Obi-Wan is that fucking badass, and this is basically right so soon before he meets up with Vader. So it's like, so that he has to get to that level. So I look at this show and I like the idea of this show because I like the idea of this, its character, and we get into this debate a bit about some of the Marvel shows too. It's this idea of, people that just want the big action-packed extravaganza thing. All these shows aren't maybe for them because they're longer. You could argue, well, they could have watched that. It just could have been a movie. We didn't need all that. You didn't need all that. That's not the point. The point is it's television, it's character. It's about those arcs. I did enjoy seeing Obi-Wan struggle with, to see Ewan play that, him struggling with the idea that he had this guilt. At the end of episode 3, we don't necessarily have a sense that he has all this guilt, but he should, So he had this guilt. He closed himself off. He was a hermit. I mean, he's stuck alone on this desert planet. That's depressing as fuck. And sure, he would probably blame himself. If he had been there on Coruscant, how would that have gone down with Palpatine? Would Anakin have done what he did with Obi-Wan there? Probably not.
Right. And the series opens with that Order 66, which, Disney posted these first 2 episodes the day after the Uvalde shooting, and watching that Order 66 so quickly after that news story that overwhelmed everything for over 24 hours the entire week was pretty jarring. But Order 66 has a lot to do with this series. You end up finding out.
Whole thing tells you, look, I don't know about you. One of the things I've always struggled with, after it's clear when you first see Return of the Jedi, but even more so after they came out with the prequels and Lucas said, 1 through 6, it's the rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. I've always struggled with the, hey, you know what? Never mind, I'm good now. With Vader.
Yes.
Like I get the interplay, I get the thing, but the idea, like, he's killed. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite things that they did in the show is they definitively show it. We've already seen it in Rogue One, but Vader's straight up. I mean, those are at least enemy combatants. He's just killing people in a village for no fucking reason, just because he can. He's calling out Obi-Wan. I mean, it's fucking evil.
And that's in episode 3. Yeah.
Go back to the younglings. It's evil. He's evil. But here's the thing. That's the point. And so what the show did do really well, ultimately, was there a need for it? No. But there are certain lines from Obi-Wan that resonate, that stick with you, that are now shown. Obi-Wan has the conversation with Luke in Jedi, and he says, I once thought as you do, but no, there's, about redeeming him, and, no, there's no good in him. Like, So we see here that conversation. That's the thing, that's the thing that drives it home. It's always been a problem for what they later did, really more in the prequels, that Darth is more of a title, because Obi-Wan calls him Darth. So he does it again. But Darth is more the title. He really should have said Vader, right? But, it is what it is. That's what was in episode 4. So that's what he does again here at the end of this, when he accepts that he's no longer Anakin.
Okay, so I'm going to bring you back to a couple things. Critiques of episode 1. I know the Leia chase sequence is on there, but it's good to see Flea.
Right.
But that chase sequence was... we got some problems, I think, with some of the action directing right now.
Well, look, starting right
overall,
off,
I think Deb Chow killed this season. Like, I think her directing was actually great.
There were definitely things that little thing in the forest, it looks silly. Look, the problem is some of it is the little girl is such great casting, but she's I think like 6 instead of 10. She's playing a 10-year-old. And sometimes it comes across, right?
I thought she was one of the highlights of the season. I love her.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
But sometimes she just seems she's young.
Yeah.
There's an awkwardness, I think, to that chase scene, and I wonder if it's not part of it is that you have this little kid.
And how much of that is shot on those digital sets? I think that was shot in a practical forest, was it not? Don't you think they would shoot that in a practical forest?
It seemed like it to me, but hard. Yeah, hard to. It definitely seemed like it was practical to me, but I don't know how much of a steadfast rule these things are. With the shooting those.
Another gripe that I have is they introduced one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars history now, and they never brought him back. The cheapskate Jawa that talks to Ewan McGregor, to talk to Obi-Wan, and tries to con him. Like, that is a good character. I want to see a spin-off show for that guy. He was awesome. He was such a little dick. That guy was great.
Yeah, that was fun. Look, I'm amused by you saying that, because I also know you're so the person, like, can we just get this new stuff? And I guess that's kind of new, but when we have conversations about even the Marvel shows, it's like, all right, there's 2 schools of thought. There's plumbing the depths, or, hey, isn't this interesting to do something, that is just not the typical show? And that's what I think, across the board, Disney's doing some really cool stuff, both with the Star Wars stuff and the Marvel stuff. And I like it. So, overall for me, I enjoy the show. I like that it exists, for those reasons. There's definitely some wonky stuff, there's definitely places it drags. There's definitely, look, we're going to get into some depth conversation, right? Clearly the rules on depth, going back to me, it starts with Maul, it goes to Fennec Shand, and the Grand Inquisitor and Reva in this. Like, I don't know what kills people unless they're really sad.
Tobey Maguire knows. Tobey Maguire said that stabbing. Tobey Maguire said stabbing isn't shit. Like, he's been stabbed before. So, like, if you stab somebody in a show, I'm just going to assume that they're good to go. Like, you got stabbed. You have to get beheaded.
The weird thing is, the lightsaber's a laser sword, but it doesn't actually cauterize in Star Wars because it's actual blood, which goes back to episode 4. But listen, like, my argument for Fennec Shand is, the gut shot, in our technology, a gut shot, you don't die right away, but you're pretty, you're fucked. It's the idea that then turning the guts into cybernetics, well, that makes sense, because otherwise you would be fucked. So you replace them. That makes sense to me. That actually can work.
You sure it's just not you think sure that Wolfman in episode 4 wasn't just anemic? When he gets his arm cut off in the Mos Eisley Cantina?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you sure that wasn't the only person that's bled when cut by the lightsaber?
But we see blood in this.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm going to take that off the list. Yep. My theories have been debunked. Okay. Episode 2. Have we seen Daegu before? The kind of Narshada looking place where this character Vec Nokru.
I don't think so. I think that was new for this.
Mm-hmm. But you also get the new character Haja, played by Kumail Nanjiani. We don't know that guy. We've never seen him around.
And there's some weird, inconsistent stuff with that character, I thought, in this show.
Describe that, because the one thing I was concerned with was that Reva lets him live, after she
that
tussles
made
with
no
him.
sense to me. I mean, it's like, all right, he's a scammer, but he's a true believer. Okay, I guess. I mean, did we see a redemption? Did that happen too quickly for you? You know,
When we know later that there's actually good in her,
no, but I'm
it's
not talking about
still, it
Reva
doesn't
so
make
much.
sense.
Yeah, we'll discuss Reva in a second, but I'm
Oh, when
saying,
he pops up again and is suddenly all in on the path,
yeah,
he seemed like, he seems to kind of he seems written inconsistently.
I mean,
It's always
even
good to see Kumail.
down to like certainly he's watching Leia, and I figured that the Bail recording, the thing that Obi-Wan was so unbelievably stupid, but I thought maybe he'd play in and there'd be a betrayal there,
Sure.
and no, it just gets dropped and found. I was like, okay, that it surprised me that that was that simplistic.
We also know that these scripts completely got rewritten too. Like, this is a series that got rewritten, and when they bring in like Justin Marks and Andrew Stanton, Disney's absolutely bringing in big guns on this. Those guys are top of the line writers, especially with the history that they've had at Pixar, etc. Over at Disney, Justin Marks wrote Jungle Book, which I thought was a really good live action with Jon Favreau. Those guys are incredible writers, but do you see some of the piecemeal nature of a massive rewrite overhaul going into production, where some things have to change narratively, but some things maybe because of production and scheduling have to be kept in place, and there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that left
I'm
over.
not really clear. I feel like the episode 3 fight with Vader and Obi-Wan. All right, I get it. He's not ready for it. The fire, but I was like, did you not feel like, all right, okay, there's a fire now. Use the Force, move the fire out of the way, go through the fire. Why is suddenly there's a fire and he just gets away just like that? And It's been suggested to me that was because of reshoots, that like they felt it just wasn't working the way it was. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I've heard that. Because did you not feel that? Like, didn't that just like that's it?
The whole fight felt kind of it just didn't feel like the blocking. It felt like the blocking was strange on characters exiting and entering action shots in different places, and I was like, this is really kind of this is a rough action sequence, and I wasn't getting the gravity of it. I thought the gravity of that episode was when Vader is starting to sacrifice the villagers to draw Obi-Wan out.
Absolutely.
I love
the way it ended. Like, did it not end like that?
He just lets him go
that way.
He just lets him go. It seemed kind of tempered. I love always seeing Indira Varma in a show. Like, I love her. I like the Tala Durith character. She was great. I was rooting for her in every episode because the path is kind of a cool pre-rebellion storyline that I'd like to see explored some more. I like Colin Loken's character.
The whole, in episode 4, they go in for the rescue, and she passes in, but then she's just like working at whatever station she wants and whatever.
She leaves like a knocked out body just like in the middle of a room. If it's hidden behind a wall, we're good to go. It seemed a little flimsy that she was able to just walk up to a station in literally the Fortress Inquisitorius, which is like a badass place. It is.
By the way, I mean, that was awesome. I loved
it. Was great. I love listen, episode 4. I was, after the Obi-Wan Vader fight in episode 3, I was feeling like this was really not a series that I was going to enjoy. It just felt like every time it was building to something, it would fall flat. And it comes down to like, okay, there's a cart that stopped at an electric gate. They're not going to keep going with the cart. Just walk around the thing. Like little details like that where I was like, guys, just come on. We can't suspend a lot. We can suspend a lot, but we can't suspend that much. But the Fortress Inquisitorius sequence with the water is what really got me back in the series. I thought that the struggle with Obi-Wan and having it reintroduced early in the episode where he's trying to move something on the ship, he's going in for the rescue, he's having massive doubts. And then when something has to have changed when he saw the Vault of Dead Jedi. That was a huge scene. And is that what unlocks Obi-Wan's powers and has him capable of holding like an ocean's worth of water back?
I think the argument is that, he's so disillusioned and down, and, and ultimately what we even see in episode 6 is like, it's interesting because, so in the prequels, the whole notion is they're basically monks, right?
Yes.
And in episode 3, at the end, Yoda sort of owns, okay, maybe we have to do it differently. Because we know Luke doesn't grow up that way. Now, notwithstanding, he's starting his training too late, which we're now led to believe in when we see episode 1, no, too late because you should have been like an infant. Mm-hmm. But to me, the idea is that what the Jedi did wrong is they just got so detached that they lost sight of what they were about, and I think that's ultimately what Obi-Wan even says to Owen at the end there. Let him be a kid, and it's going to work itself out. But I thought it was really interesting that, it's Obi-Wan's feelings that, allow him to really realign himself, I think, with the Force, bring him out of his depression and to be connected again. And that's an interesting thing, right? Because it really is. It's about connection. It's being connected to the Force, which is all about all living things, right? The connection between all living things. So if he's feeling disconnected, he's kind of disconnected from that, right?
Were there any Jedi in that vault that were recognizable from any other Jedi?
I didn't notice any. Now, I do want to say that in the episode before, they name dropped Quinlan Vos, which is a really cool big deal.
Why so?
So Quinlan Vos was a character that we see him in the prequels in the background. When Dark Horse started doing the comics that were immediately, like right when episode 1 came out, Quinlan Vos was a big character there. And
is he the guy with the big head, or is the guy with the squid?
The one that looks like a Native American.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and he's basically a stereotype of Native American. He's an amazing tracker. They track through the Force and all that. But, and the way the stories have gone, and they apparently they've done books on him recently. So he's definitely part of continuity again. But they always had Quinlan Vos. He'd gone undercover for a long time, and he's dancing around with the notion. And he's like, in episode 1, he's actually on Tatooine in the background. And Qui-Gon doesn't acknowledge him because he's actually undercover.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And how's he name dropped here?
In episode 2, when they go to rescue them on Geonosis, he's in the battle in the arena.
What do we have here in episode 3, the reference?
So there's a name drop that Quinlan Vos was there using the path to get people out.
Oh, cool.
He chose a name. So basically there's a statement that there they are 10 years in, Quinlan Vos is still out there.
That is cool. And that's something that Tala drops in that one?
Obi-Wan says it. He sees the mark on the wall.
That's cool.
He reads, so.
Yeah. So episode 3.
Frankly, that's probably. I mean, they didn't do that.
That's really cool. Yeah, no, that's actually, maybe we see him later, but that was a really cool shout out. I got to tell you, that hallway sequence with the cracked windows, that really kicked it up for me.
For me, that was something. Obi-Wan's trying, he's using the Force, and that. And honestly, even in that episode, he starts doing the lightsaber movements. He's deflecting bolts.
He's learning it.
He's sort of what I would call this signature Ewan Obi-Wan movements that you had in episode.
Oh, he's just riding a bike again. He's ready to ride a bike again. Yeah. The young actress who plays young Leia, I think, really helped make that episode. In the torture sequence, was really tough to watch. She was great.
So I have a question for you. Something that bothered me a lot. So from the get-go, the idea of using Leia, to draw him out really bothered me. And the reason it bothered me is I don't quite buy this idea. Hey, Obi-Wan worked with Bail Organa during the war. Kinda. I mean, some. So let's kidnap his daughter. That's going to draw Obi-Wan out. Notwithstanding who she really is what draws him out. But you know what I mean? I didn't quite buy that. And more to the point, what bothers me is, I mean, these are the people that are hunting Jedi and hunting Jedi, Force-sensitive children. And, it's an interesting thing because in episode 6, we find out, oh, yes, after episode 5, there is another. Yeah, Leia has the Force also. She could do it if Luke can't. That's the whole conversation between them, right? She says, you have a power I can never understand. He says, yes, you can. The Force is destroying my family. So they're pretty much saying, Leia's always had the Force too. And suddenly she's daring. She's a good shot. She's all these things, Is any of that the Force? I never felt that way in episodes 4, 5, and 6. But in this, I think it's pretty clear Force sensitive. She has that precocious Force, ideas about, and how to fix things and all that. Like Anakin.
In episode 5, for sure. In episode 5, when she's trying to fix the gate or the way get them to escape, for sure have
it's
her.
It's a total callback to Anakin in episode 1.
And I think her back and forth with Reva in episode 4, which I thought was
all
really
the things
great.
of her sensing things and people being honest and all that. That's all implied Force ability. So my point is that Do they not see that this kid is force sensitive?
Reva just was like, I got my goal, you know?
Yeah, that's hard.
You're right. Some of that stuff is muddied.
Well, ultimately, I'll tell you I mean, if it was in Star Wars and very specifically the way it works with Vader and Palpatine, I would be screaming bullshit. But ultimately, all these things going in from episode 1, I'm going, well, it worked once. Wouldn't they then know to do it again? But the idea of Palpatine saying at the end, oh, your feeling's right on this. And it's pretty much straight up, nope, got to let it go.
Yeah.
It was straight up. Vader had to let go of looking for Obi-Wan.
It's like somebody to me like,
exchanges.
Bro, she's no good for you. She's not worth it. Like, is Palpatine just a good bro?
No. Okay. Palpatine doesn't trust that. Look, it's the old line of fine line between, thin line between love and hate.
Mm-hmm.
Palpatine doesn't trust that if he's so obsessed with Obi-Wan, what is that really about? You could say it's hate, but does it not mean that Obi-Wan could maybe pull him back?
Right. Yeah, that could be what the Emperor's afraid of.
It shouldn't be that important if he's all in.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what we see, right? Because even though he's chasing Luke, he's going to get Luke for the Emperor. And ultimately, that blows up, right?
Yeah. So I said that sequence with the hallway and the glass totally repaired any doubts I had about this series. And I knew I was going to enjoy the rest of it, if only on like a Star Wars spectacle level. Part 5 has a pretty fucking awesome spectacle when Vader holds the ship midair. That was awesome.
I love that. There are people that said, oh, it's the cupping the Thanos, pulling the moon thing. But, I felt that, we've all said, all right, Rogue One was that finally seeing Vader be badass. But particularly in the extended universe, and even in the comics that are canon, you see Vader do these giant acts, like that he's that powerful, pulling ships out of the air, using the Force to fight them.
How does he not see the other ship?
Well, it was right behind it.
Yeah, but like one of them revealed.
Listen, you can argue, well, he got the one, couldn't do the other, but ostensibly it's an act of will of doing it, and it's really.
Oh yeah, you get text.
Yeah, I mean, look, the big thing in episode 2 with the fruit, like he's really powerful, but there's a nuance to it. Nuance is hard.
Mm-hmm.
With him, with Padme, with the fruit. It's not, it's not, nuance isn't so easy. It's more, the sudden acts are easier,
Jabim, where that takes place, have we seen that in any other Star Wars, that Jabim, that planet where the path is using to get people out of there?
I thought Jabim was made up for this.
Yeah. No, I'm just asking because you know the lore, and I like those story. I like those little Easter eggs.
Yeah, every now and then, you see something. Honestly, I like the idea that there were planets that we weren't accustomed to already.
Agreed.
Some people argued, well, shouldn't it be on Tatooine? I was like, but should it be on Tatooine? And, listen, the argument
absolutely not
the other day about Tatooine, and, because everyone goes, oh, everything's Tatooine. It's like, Tatooine is supposed to be, it's the outer rim. The idea, it's very clearly said. First of all, even in episode 4, the idea of, like even Han Solo not necessarily believing in Jedi, it's, the Empire does not straight up control Tatooine. In episode 1, they're saying, even in terms of the Republic, like there's still slavery because it's far out. It's not close. It's not part of galactic center where all with civilization is,
Right.
And that's the thing. Remember, that's the idea of it. It's like it's that unsettled thing. It gives it that Western feeling.
Yeah, that's when Star Wars, I think, is at its best, and I think Mandalorian season 1's proof of that.
And I think that's the thing. So they go back to Tatooine because that's what we all love the most, because that's what was in episode 4. But no, this is a big galaxy. There's a lot more going on, a lot of other things. Honestly, one of the great things about the Clone Wars series, for people that haven't watched it, it's usually in arcs that are like 4 episodes long, but it goes all over the place. Like you'll have it's following Anakin, and Ahsoka's his Padawan, and Obi-Wan. Sometimes you'll get a story about, the bounty hunters on their own. You get Boba Fett stories, your young Boba Fett stories. You get Padme stories, Jar Jar. The droids have stories on their own, and there's whole episode arcs of just the droids, and they're somewhere else. So it goes all over, all kinds of planets. You get things on Dathomir, with the Sons of Ventress, and and Savage Opress, who is Darth Maul's brother, and and you end up finding that actually both Asajj Ventress is actually a member of the race that the Dathomir witches come from, which has been in the extended universe and the canon books. They're basically dark force witches.
And aren't they also in the sequels? Like some reference to the Dathomir witches in the sequel trilogy?
I think there was a reference. I think in it was in Rise of Skywalker.
I'm not sure. I mean, we're blocking it hard.
Yeah. I mean, as I've gone through and watching this stuff with my stepson, I'll rewatch. But I kind of even buying Hot Toys, I'm like, the sequel.
So Ian,
but my point is that so Maul is actually the male of that species.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Maul is the reference to the male of that sequence.
He's Maul is his name. Species from Dathomir. But anyway, so so I really like that about this series. I like that they did that stuff. Look, my main complaints sort of line up with a lot of Star Wars stuff. Sometimes it's simplistic. It's the same thing. I mean, what's her name? Sorry, I'm having.
Yeah, I would just want to say that I think Andrea Hammond in the comments is right that the reference to the Dathomir witches actually happened in either Mandalorian season 2 or it happened in Book of Boba Fett. I think it happened in one of the Disney Plus series, the Dathomir witches. But I think you're referencing that
it'd be Filoni then.
Yeah. But I think you're referencing some kind of inconsistency that we get.
Well, no, I'm just saying that in episode 5 when Indira Varma's character gets killed.
Yeah.
I mean, that sequence, like you saw it coming, but it was a bit like, all right, and she's gonna save him, and then she's gonna hold the grenade. And,
I think you got to do that stuff.
Yeah, it's just I
love it.
That's the Star Wars of it. It's always a little hokey. It's not it's never. If it was the absolute best writing in the world, would it really feel like Star Wars? Like sometimes it's just supposed to be. It's more about it's thematic.
And her droid buddy. Her droid buddy was awesome.
That me, and it's the callback to it's K2SO again, right?
Yeah, it felt like K2SO, and I loved that droid, and Tala's sacrifice. I loved that scene, and I loved the May the Force be with you stuff. Vader not knowing that Reva was going to betray him. Vader knew though, right? Because the Inquisitor comes in. That whole thing.
So, and by the way, and that's an interesting idea. So. People go, well, what do you mean he knew all along? Well, their idea is really simple. Vader's so secure in his power in the Force that he's not worried about her. But he knows she has hate. Well, hate's something he can use. That's the whole notion of she's Force sensitive. So she hates him so much, great. And she's planning on killing him all this time. In the meantime, she's hunting people down for them.
Right.
She's a useful tool. It's sort of ingenious, and it's sort of, to me, it's worthy of Palpatine,
And he knows. Like
he knows he's known from day one. It's always been coming, and he's so powerful. And it reminds me of that thing back in episode 2 about Anakin's senses and Obi-Wan's arguing with him. The beginning, when trying to assassinate Padme, right? Mm-hmm. His senses. His back is turned. Doesn't matter. He's fully aware of where the lightsaber is.
Yeah, and I got to tell you that Kenobi and Anakin training flashback that we get in episode 5, I actually loved that. Yeah, I loved it. And I love how it's a precursor to, I'm just going to say that episode 6, from the moment that Obi-Wan goes to that planet to battle Vader, this is what that series was made for. This is where we really get Deb Chow shining. Every frame from that sequence.
I love that.
It's a Ralph McQuarrie painting. Every frame was awesome. The red and blue stuff going on in that sequence, the grandeur of it was Star Wars. And I liked this sequence. I liked the fight between Kenobi and Vader in episode 6 more than I like anything in the sequel trilogy. That sequence of Star Wars, and there's multiple sequences to it. We can talk about the dumminess of like leaving Kenobi alive or leaving Vader alive, and
that's just it. I mean, it's dumb, but it's literally it's what has to happen, because
in the lesson is mercy.
Episode 4, it has to be that the notion that the last time I saw you, I was still a learner. Now I am a master. I mean, now it's 9 years later. He's learned his lessons. Because he got cocky. And there's a great meme going around, I think I sent you, that made me laugh, that, oh, he had the high ground and he threw it on him. He literally tore the high ground apart and crumbled it down. Like,
Vader got cocky, but I think Obi-Wan's lesson, and he repeats it with Reva on Tatooine a few moments later, is that mercy is how you win. And that goes back to the fight in the flashback of episode 5, where Kenobi and Anakin are training, and Anakin thinks that he has Kenobi beat, and he's cocky again, just like he is when he drops a bunch of rocks on him. This stuff was so good, and I loved the sequence. If I'm going to revisit the series, these are the moments I'm going to revisit. The Tatooine stuff was cool. It was good to see the Lars kicking some ass, but
and down to the injuring his knee.
Yeah, he injures his knee.
Bad knee in episode 4.
But the scene that is one of my top 5 Star Wars scenes comes in this episode, and that's when Hayden gets to shine, acting with just one eye. In that smashed helmet scene is so it's fantastic.
It's some of the best stuff he's done in any of this. It outshines anything he did in episode 2 and episode 3.
Yes. And it goes back to the actor that I think should still be working. I mean, you see him in Shattered Glass, you see him in Life as a House. I think Hayden Christensen's an awesome actor. And sometimes there's the curse of the Star Wars stuff, where if you're not getting the right direction or the right material, sometimes it dents you. But Deb Chow took that stuff, and I love that scene so much between the two of them. Listen, it was painful.
I want a Vader show. They've done some really great comics that are canon that really get into things about what life is. Vader, the Emperor, there's all these sycophants, there's all kinds of people all around the Emperor, regular things of people trying to assassinate Vader, him, uncovering plots. They've done these comics already. It doesn't matter, because there's always more of them, and there's different time. I mean, you have the 10 years before this, you have the 9 years after. I mean, there's so much room for so many really cool stories. And the interesting thing about having it be like assassination plots and things like that is, because Vader's your anti-hero, but you can actually root for him when he's up against someone else who's bad. In the current comic, they actually have a storyline going where an old handmaiden of Padme's has pulled him in, and she actually has him doing some things that are sort of good, in furtherance of other things, because remember, it's about order. He's not evil for evil's sake. He's not necessarily looking to do evil per se, as much as he's been corrupted. So it's interesting.
The Tatooine stuff, again, you get Obi-Wan reiterating to Reva that you win through mercy. Reva seems redeemed. Well, we're gonna see more of her, right?
Let's discuss her motivations for a second. She finds out about Luke at the end there. I didn't think she wasn't going there to use him as a hostage. She was going there to kill him. In her mind, in her warped, damaged mind,
she was there to kill Luke.
Was revenge, yeah, and that's why she flashed on. She's becoming him. She was going to kill a youngling.
Mm-hmm.
That for revenge, and that's where she realized, what am I doing?
Right. I've become the thing that I've been hunting, that I hated the most. And there's a user on Facebook saying, does Anakin know about his children? That's what he wondered all along.
No.
Does he just not care? Okay,
no,
he doesn't know. Yeah.
That's the whole point. When Darth Vader finds out, because it becomes a thing, Luke Skywalker. So here's the thing.
Going into Empire.
We all joke about the fact that, all right, Luke has the Skywalker name. He's on Tatooine. Obi-Wan's going by Ben, still Kenobi. Tatooine is not civilization. No one's plugging into computers that are going back to the Empire. There's no census happening. Mm-hmm. People don't know unless they directly know it. That's why it was actually really important at the end. You want to meet him so that Luke later recognizes, oh, maybe he's talking about Ben Kenobi, this hermit that lives out in the Dune Sea.
I met him when I was 10.
Yeah, like that's what it is. Like that's just how people know each other. That's it.
But there are lightsabers buried. There's like 30 lightsabers buried in the Dune Sea. Everybody buries lightsabers. If you were in the Dune Sea, you probably kick a lightsaber and dent your toe. Walking.
That's just the place you go to bury lightsabers.
You just bury lightsabers out there.
Right. Yeah, they should be doing kyber mining there, right?
Look at all these crystals we found. This is amazing. So Ian,
Powering Death Star.
wrapping this stuff up, we got to talk about the cameo that I was so excited wasn't spoiled for me. We're gonna spoil it here.
Palpatine.
If the Palpatine was good when he's like, bro, forget about her, man.
Got you, bro.
I got you,
You're
bro.
good, right?
I got you. You don't need that girl. You don't need Obi-Wan. Get over it, bro. We got to talk about Qui-Gon. How good that felt.
I mean,
That
listen, he
felt
knew
so
he was
good.
coming. He had to come.
I did not.
I did. I never had any doubt. The whole show, we kept calling out Master, Master.
I
You
know.
know, talking to him.
I thought they were gonna get it with a voice, but holy shit, how good did that feel when you saw him?
It was great. I just love the line, you know, I've always been here. You just you weren't ready to listen.
Yes, that is actually a fantastic line because it is the series. Yeah. That was the purpose for this Obi-Wan series. And when you talk about whether or not we needed an Obi-Wan series, obviously, like, you can argue, no, we didn't need an Obi-Wan series. That line specifically, and yes, there's the justifications and little course corrections for all the lines we get later in the episodes and before. That line made it personal and it made it a justification for re-exploring this character again. It was him learning to listen, and I loved that. That was a scene that really put a bow on the entire series and put it in the, along with that fight scene in episode 6, like, just put it in, hey Jonathan, this is top 5 Star Wars for you. And right now, Big Yanks in New York, who thinks I hate Star Wars, is probably losing his mind, and because he was expecting me to, I think, dunk on this series, but that episode 6 and then episode 4, 5, those things really, I loved every single one of them. If they had brought back that cheapskate Jawa, chef's kiss. It would have been the perfect Star Wars for me, you know. And Babu Frick. If Babu Frick had showed up.
Episode 6, I think, redeemed so much. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the latter half of this series, it just keeps getting better and better.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ian, any last thoughts on this? Where do we think we're going to see Reva again? I think is the main question.
The buzz is, I mean, listen, they set it up. The buzz is they're developing a show for her that's not been announced, you know? And to be clear, the idea that there were people that didn't like her, I don't think that many people. I just think the haters have a big voice.
That's true. I agree.
I'd watch.
Oh, we're going to watch. We're going to watch. When will
we
see Jar Jar next? Because I wanted to see a little bit of him do something.
Listen, watch Clone Wars. Jar Jar's in plenty of Clone Wars episodes.
I want to see.
He has whole adventures in there every now and then.
I know, but I want to see Ahmed Best, our former Geekscape guest, back on the screen doing his thing.
Yeah.
All right, Ian. I think we get to see you again.
Probably not getting that show.
I know, but a cameo would be great. I'd love to see him in some of these. All right. So, Ian, we're going to see you again with Thor: Love and Thunder. We're going to see that episode. We're going to record not in 2 weekends. Like, we're going to go see some Thor: Love and Thunder here pretty quick, man. That's going to be awesome. And then we got Miss Marvel right after that, the wrap up of Miss Marvel.
Yeah, very much enjoying that. And then we have Andor soon, and we have She-Hulk.
Ooh, I think those are in August. But before that, Ian, we got a little celebration in July. That's the first time we get to celebrate down there in 2-3 years. San Diego Comic-Con. We're going to be down there at booth 3919, Geekscape, and Ian's going to be there. He'll be a part of it. We're going to be doing daily wrap-up shows. So tell your friends to subscribe to the feed, share it with your friends, and let them know, hey, subscribe to this if you want to know what's going down in pop culture, because these guys are going to Comic-Con starting on Tuesday to set up the booth. We're going to be in Comic-Con more than most places, and we'll be bringing you news every day of it right here on this feed. So subscribe to it, share it with your friends, and let's get this party going. Ian, thank you so much for being on the show, dude.
Of course.
I love having you on there. All right, man. Geekscapists, you know the drill. Visit nordvpn.com/Geekscape for your deal and to help our sponsors. And, of course, hit that little like button on anything Geekscape. Subscribe to our YouTube. And, of course, subscribe to this feed on your podcast apps. Leave us a review with 5 stars. We really appreciate that. We got some great stuff coming up in the next few weeks, including later this week. So you want to be a part of it. Thanks, Geekscapists. Over and out. May the force be with you.